Do you have students who come up to you and say, I don't know what to write about? I have no idea. My mind is going blank. Or they'll sit there for days and not get anything accomplished. Today I'm going to show you the 5 writer's tricks that I teach my students at the beginning of the school year so that we can use them throughout the school year, and my students, they don't get writer's block anymore. Or if they do, I ask them what strategy can help them through that. Hey, I'm Kathy Harsh from teach2write.com. I help teachers like you, middle school teachers, help your students to become better, more confident writers without you losing your mind. So what are these magical writing tricks that I'm going to show you? Well, I am going to talk about all 5 tricks that I use. However, in subsequent videos from this one, I am going to talk about each one separately and how I actually introduce it and teach it in my classroom so that you can use that if you need to, or you can refresh yourself on how to use each of these 5 tricks. I'm only going to show you some short demonstrations that go very quickly in this particular video. I just kind of want to introduce you to the tricks, let you see them, and then in the other videos, I will break it down and talk to you about how I teach each of them to my middle school writers. So let's get started with the first trick. Trick number 1 is asking questions. So students need to practice asking questions, especially when they're writing, to ask themselves questions to get at more details. And once they do that, then they'll be able to add more details into their writing. And they need to ask themselves who, what, where, why, when, and how. It's a good idea to practice this quite a bit with each of the different tricks because students will need those in order to be able to do each of those tricks. Another thing that I use always when we are doing a writer's trick, and if I have them writing or reading in the classroom, I use a timer. So using the timer is essential for the writer's trick to work because you're trying to get them to think faster and to turn off that internal editor that tells them all their ideas are bad or they're not original. So the second writer's trick, this one you would use with a timer, you have them list ideas. Now, in their writer's journals, they can keep, maybe even a whole section of lists. I've had students do positive, negative memory lists. I've had them list all their favorite things, all their least favorite things. I've had them list what they love the flavor of or love the sight of. I go through all the 5 senses and I have them make a list of all the things they love and then all the things they hate about those things. Other things that I have them list down are things like important people in their life and why they're important, important objects, things of that nature. These are lists that we'll come back to throughout the school year as I have them key into either something that we're reading or key into something that we're going to write. So those lists will come in handy, especially if you have them kind of grouped together in one section of their notebook. When listing, you want to dig deeper to get at the details. So once students have made their list, then have them create a second column in which the students ask themselves why about each item on their list. Why is something my favorite or least favorite? Why is a particular person one of my favorites? So let's look at this little list that I made here. I have favorite things that should be favorite people, but that's okay. Ed Sheeran, my husband. There's a lot that I could talk about with those two people. But when I ask myself why, the first thing that pops into my head for Ed Sheeran was that was the last concert I went to with my daughter. And then with my husband, I just immediately thought of the way he plays with our dogs and at one point in time how he played with our children. My children are now grown up, so he doesn't still play with them. This helps writers to explore their emotional attachments to people, things, and events, conjure up memories with details. They start to get a clearer picture in their mind. So, for example, with Ed Sheeran, I just kind of saw his face. But when I thought about the last concert with my daughter, I get a full-blown picture and kind of like a movie in my head that I can actually go through and describe and talk about. It provides a more personal purpose for writing as well. The third writer's trick is mind mapping. So once students have made their list, they choose one of their topics. They put that topic in the center of the page. And then after that, they put out these like little lines. It looks like a spider's web when they're done. And from each one of those lines, they put a different idea. And from each of those separate ideas or subtopics, they put even more details. So they get more specific as they go out into the web. And once they have mind mapped their ideas out, there's one more thing they do before they actually get to writing. And that is they look at their map. It's going to be a crazy bunch of ideas all over the page. So the next best thing to do is to have them start at the middle. That's what their first sentence is going to be about, is their topic. And then have them choose where they're going to go next. What should be idea number 2? What should be idea number 3? You should model this. You're going to talk your students through why you're choosing to go in one direction or another. The fourth trick for breaking writer's block is writer sprints or free writing, depending on what you want to call it, and actually where they're going to write it. I kind of like calling it writer sprints because, like I said, we use a timer. And if I'm going to have them free write, sometimes I do that for a bell ringer just to kind of get them started, or I get them to free write like different leads to a piece of writing, beginning sentences, things like that, or dialogue, depending on what I'm teaching. Then when they get back to their seats, then they type those into the computer. They have something written down. They have something to start with. Sometimes we do free writing no more than 5 minutes during a mini lesson or during a bell ringer because their hands are going to get really, really tired. If I only want them to write one paragraph, I'm only going to have 5 to 10 minutes to do a writer sprint on the computer. Because if they already have some ideas jotted down in their journals, then they should be able to get started right into a writing sprint. I also am thinking of doing this next school year, having my writer's workshop time, either a writer or reader sprint for 20 minutes. Now we're going to work up to that. It's going to start off as 10, then go to 15, and then go to 20 without a break. The first couple times I do is probably going to be 5 minutes, and then we're going to share, and then maybe we'll do another 5 minutes, and then we'll share. Because I have to teach procedures and how to get on the computer and all those kinds of things. The fifth and last writer's trick that I'm going to talk about today is drawing to write. And what students do with that is they actually draw maps, pictures of characters. They can draw graffiti type words, draw like a cartoon kind of sketch, and then that helps them kind of get started with writing. Your kids that are artistic are going to love that, and they might turn to that quite often. What I found out from some of my students after I talked to them about the writer's tricks and we went over them, I'd have students come up to me and show me their writer's notebooks where they had done the same thing, where they have mapped out rooms in a house or they map out like a city. I've seen some really wonderful things with students mixing a lot of these tricks together. So between kind of like mind mapping and drawing to write, they kind of put the two of those together and come up with like a labeled map. Like I said, I will be doing some videos about the 5 tricks that break writer's block, but what I wanted to offer you is the 5 tricks that break writer's block teacher's guide. It's free. You just click on the link below, www.teachtowrite.com/5tricks. And what you would get with that is a PDF teacher guide, how to teach the 5 tricks videos, where I go into a lot more depth than I did for this video. Each of those videos are about 10 minutes long. And it also includes student worksheets you can use when you're introducing the tricks. They're kind of fun. They're magical themed, as you can see from the picture there. They're both in digital and printable. There's also a grading rubric so you can assess their progress. And it's free. Just click on the link in the description box below. Bye for now, and happy writing.